The day Lieutenant Commander Zara Blackthorne first saw the Andromesh Nebula, she thought it was the most beautiful thing in the universe. Stretched across 3 light-years of space, it glowed like scattered jewels against black velvet, birthing stars in brilliant nurseries of gas and cosmic dust. The blues and purples swirled together in patterns that seemed almost alive, pulsing with the rhythm of creation itself. She stood on the observation deck of the UES Prometheus, her breath fogging the reinforced viewport as she pressed closer to the glass. "Magnificent, isn't it?" came a voice behind her. Zara turned to see Dr. Elena Vasquez approaching, her tablet clutched against her chest. The xenobiologist had been studying the nebula for 3 months now, cataloging the complex chemical processes that turned raw hydrogen into the building blocks of solar systems. "I've never seen anything like it," Zara admitted. "The way the light plays through those gas clouds, it's like watching God paint the universe." Elena smiled, but there was something troubled in her expression. "That's what makes Admiral Kessler's orders so." She trailed off, shaking her head. Zara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's climate control. "What orders?" Before Elena could answer, the ship's intercom crackled to life. "All senior staff to conference room Alpha immediately. Priority 1 briefing." 20 minutes later, Zara sat around the polished metal table with the rest of the Prometheus crew, watching Admiral Marcus Kessler activate the holographic display. The nebula appeared in miniature before them, rotating slowly, its beauty somehow diminished by the sterile blue light of the projection. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kessler began, his weathered face grave, "what you're looking at represents the future of warfare." He was a man who'd seen too many battles, his gray hair cropped short and his uniform pressed to perfection. Dr. Harrison Webb and his team at the Titan Research Station have made a breakthrough that will change everything. Zara glanced at the ship's chief engineer, Commander Ryan Torres, who was frowning at the display. Ryan had worked with experimental weapons before, but she'd never seen him look so uncomfortable. "The Andromesh Nebula," Kessler continued, "contains approximately 4 trillion tons of ionized matter in various stages of stellar formation. Dr. Webb has discovered a way to weaponize this material by artificially accelerating the gravitati collapse process and directing the resulting energy release." The hologram shifted, showing technical schematics that made Zara's stomach turn. Where she saw beauty and creation, the Admiral saw destruction and opportunity. "In simple terms," Kessler said, "we can turn star-forming regions into cluster munitions. One nebula could theoretically destroy an entire enemy fleet, or even sterilize a planet's surface." Dr. Vasquez spoke up, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Admiral, what you're describing would destroy one of the most scientifically valuable phenomena in the sector. The Andromesh Nebula is actively forming a dozen new star systems. We're talking about the destruction of potential worlds, potential life." Kessler's expression didn't change. "Dr. Vasquez, we're in a war. The hegemony forces have pushed us back to our last 3 systems. If we don't find a way to stop them, there won't be any human worlds left to worry about." The room fell silent. Everyone knew the truth of it. The war with the Kepler hegemony had been raging for 8 years, and humanity was losing. Their enemies' bioships could regenerate damage faster than human weapons could inflict it, and their numbers seemed endless. "When do we begin?" asked Major Sarah Kim, the ship's tactical officer. She was younger than Zara, ambitious and hungry for advancement, but there was no enthusiasm in her voice now. "Dr. Webb's team is already en route aboard the research vessel Icarus," Kessler replied. "We'll rendezvous with them at the nebula's edge in 72 hours. The Prometheus will provide security and technical support for the operation." As the briefing continued, Zara found herself staring at the holographic nebula. In the projection, she could see the dense knots where new stars were forming, the delicate filaments of gas and dust that would someday become planets. How many potential civilizations were they about to snuff out before they even had a chance to begin? 3 days later, the Prometheus hung at the edge of the Andromesh Nebula like a metal splinter against a cosmic tapestry. The research vessel Icarus had arrived on schedule, bristling with experimental equipment that looked more like torture devices than scientific instruments. Dr. Harrison Webb came aboard for the preliminary briefing, and Zara disliked him immediately. He was tall and pale, with the kind of intense stare that suggested he saw people as variables in an equation, rather than human beings. When he spoke about the nebula, it was with the detached precision of a surgeon discussing a patient he was about to dissect. "The process is elegantly simple," Webb explained to the assembled crew. "We deploy gravitational resonance generators at key points throughout the nebula's structure. These devices create artificial gravitational wells that accelerate the natural collapse process by several orders of magnitude." Ryan Torres raised his hand. "Dr. Webb, What's to prevent this process from cascading out of control? If you're artificially accelerating stellar formation, couldn't you trigger a chain reaction? Webb's smile was thin and cold. Commander Torres, the energy release will be precisely controlled. We've run thousands of simulations. Simulations, Elena muttered under her breath, but loud enough for everyone to hear. Computer models can't account for every variable in a system this complex. Dr. Vasquez, Webb said, his tone patronizing. I understand your concerns, but this is a military operation, not a research expedition. The potential benefits far outweigh the risks. Zara watched the exchange with growing unease. She'd served under enough commanders to recognize the signs of a man who'd become so focused on his objective that he'd lost sight of everything else. Webb wasn't just willing to destroy the nebula, he was eager to do it. The next morning, Zara found herself assigned to the Advanced Reconnaissance Team. Their job was to take a shuttle into the nebula's outer reaches and identify optimal placement sites. For Webb's gravitational resonance generators, it should have been routine, but as their shuttle, the Peregrine, penetrated the nebula's edge, Zara felt like they were violating something sacred. The pilot, Lieutenant Jake Morrison, whistled softly as they entered the gas cloud. Would you look at that? He murmured, gesturing toward the view screen. They were surrounded by pillars of creation that stretched for millions of kilometers, sculpted by stellar winds and magnetic fields into impossible architectures of light and shadow. Here and there, Zara could see the brilliant pinpoints of protostars, newborn suns beginning their billion-year journeys toward full ignition. Sensor readings are off the charts, reported Ensign Marcus Cole from the co-pilot seat. Marcus was fresh out of the academy, barely 22, and his excitement at being part of such an important mission was obvious. The electromagnetic activity in here is incredible. It's like the whole nebula is alive, in a way. It is, said Dr. Vasquez, who was studying her readings with increasing fascination. The chemical processes happening here are more complex than anything we've ever observed. There are organic compounds forming in these gas clouds, the building blocks of life itself. Lieutenant Morrison guided them deeper into the nebula, following coordinates that Webb had provided. The beauty around them was overwhelming, but Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they were intruders here, tourists in a cathedral they were planning to burn down. First deployment site coming up, Morrison announced. Beginning approach to coordinates Alpha 7. The site Webb had chosen was a dense knot of gas and dust, where 3 separate stellar nurseries intersected. Even to Zara's untrained eye, it was obviously a critical junction point in the nebula's structure. Destroying it would be like pulling a keystone from an arch. Deploying marker beacon. Cole reported. Site Alpha 7 confirmed. They moved on to the next location, then the next, each one more spectacular than the last. With each beacon they placed, Zara felt like they were marking execution sites. By the time they'd completed their circuit and begun the journey back to the Prometheus, she was fighting back tears. You're quiet, Elena observed as they left the nebula behind. Just thinking, Zara replied. In all your years studying space phenomena, have you ever seen anything like this? Elena shook her head. Never. The Andromesh Nebula is unique in our galaxy, maybe in the universe. The gravitational dynamics, the chemical composition, the sheer scale of star formation. Destroying it would be like burning down the Library of Alexandria. But if it saves humanity? Morrison asked from the pilot's seat. I mean, I'm as amazed by all this as anyone. But if it's a choice between this nebula and human civilization, is it, though? Elena countered. Is this really our only option? Or just the most dramatic one? Before anyone could answer, Cole's instruments began beeping frantically. Lieutenant Morrison, I'm picking up multiple contacts on long-range sensors. Unknown configuration, but they're big. Morrison's hands flew over his controls. How big? Dreadnought class, at least. Maybe bigger. Cole's voice was tight with tension. Sir, I think we've got company. The shuttle shuddered as Morrison pushed the engines to maximum burn, racing back toward the Prometheus. Behind them, emerging from the cosmic dust like leviathans. From the deep, came the distinctive bioships of the Kepler hegemony. The enemy vessels were unlike anything in the human fleet. Grown rather than built, they resembled massive sea creatures more than spacecraft. Their hulls rippling with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in hypnotic rhythms. They moved with an organic grace that made human ships look clumsy by comparison, sliding through space as if swimming through invisible currents. Prometheus, this is Peregrine. Morrison called over the comm. We have incoming hostiles. Repeat, incoming hostiles. At least 6 Dreadnought-class bioships, closing fast on our position. Admiral Kessler's voice crackled through the static. Peregrine, get back here now. All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. The next few hours passed in a blur of controlled chaos. The Prometheus and the Icarus took defensive positions at the nebula's edge while Webb's team worked frantically to accelerate their deployment schedule. The hegemony ships had stopped just outside weapons range, but their intentions were clear. They knew what the humans were planning, and they weren't going to allow it. How did they know? Kessler demanded. During an emergency briefing, this operation was classified at the highest levels. Does it matter? Webb replied, his earlier calm replaced by manic urgency. We need to deploy the generators now, before they can stop us. Even a partial deployment could be enough to drive them off. Ryan Torres looked up from his engineering console. Admiral, Dr. Webb's equipment isn't ready for combat deployment. We need at least 12 more hours to complete the pre-flight checks. We don't have 12 hours. Webb snapped. Every minute we delay gives them time to organize an attack. Zara found herself studying the tactical display, watching the alien ships maintain their silent vigil. There was something almost patient about their positioning, as if they were waiting for something. Admiral, she said slowly, what if they're not here to attack us? Kessler turned to her, one eyebrow raised. Explain. They could have jumped us the moment we arrived. Caught us completely off guard. Instead, they're keeping their distance, maintaining position. It's almost like she paused, the thought crystallizing in her mind. Like they're protecting something. Protecting what? Webb demanded. It's empty space and gas clouds. Not empty, Elena said quietly. Commander Blackthorn might be onto something. During our reconnaissance mission, I detected something unusual in the deep scans. There were patterns in the nebula structure that didn't match natural formation processes. All eyes turned to her. What kind of patterns? Kessler asked. Elena activated her tablet, displaying a complex three-dimensional map of the nebula's internal structure. Look here, and here, she said, highlighting specific regions. These formations are irregular, too geometrically precise to be natural. It's almost like what? Zara prompted. Like the nebula itself has been cultivated, shaped by intelligence. The briefing room fell silent as the implications sank in. If Elena was right, if the Andromesh Nebula wasn't just a natural phenomenon but some kind of alien construction, or preserve, then humanity was about to commit an act of unprecedented destruction. Even if that's true, Webb argued, it doesn't change our situation. We're at war. We need every advantage we can get. Dr. Webb, Admiral Kessler said slowly, if this nebula is some kind of alien artifact or sanctuary, destroying it could be seen as an act of war against whoever created it. We're already at war. Webb's composure finally cracked, his voice rising. The hegemony has killed billions of human beings. They've destroyed entire worlds. If this nebula can help us stop them, then we have a moral obligation to use it, regardless of who might have been here first. Zara watched Webb's face as he spoke and realized that somewhere along the way, the brilliant scientist had become something else entirely. The same obsession that had driven him to unlock the nebula's secrets had also blinded him to their greater significance. I want to talk to them, she said suddenly. Everyone turned to stare at her. Talk to who? Kessler asked. The hegemony ships. They're maintaining communication silence, but they're clearly here for a reason. Maybe we can find out what they want before we start shooting. Webb laughed bitterly. Commander Blackthorn, these aren't human beings we can negotiate with. They're alien invaders who've been trying to exterminate our species for 8 years. Have they? Zara asked. Or have we just been fighting without ever trying to understand why? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Everyone in the room knew the history of the war. How it had started with first contact gone wrong. How quickly diplomacy had given way to violence. But had anyone really tried to understand the hegemony's motivations beyond simple conquest? Admiral, Zara continued, I request permission to attempt communication with the hegemony vessels. Kessler was quiet for a long moment, his weathered face thoughtful. Finally, he nodded. Very well. Commander, but the moment they show hostile intent, we respond with overwhelming force. An hour later, Zara sat in the communications center, staring at the transmission controls that would send her message across space to the alien fleet. She'd volunteered for this, but now that the moment had arrived, she wasn't sure what to say. How do you apologize to a species you've been at war with for nearly a decade? How do you explain that you might have been wrong about everything? She keyed the transmitter. Hegemony vessels. This is Lieutenant Commander Zara Blackthorn of the United Earth ship Prometheus. I am requesting parley. We may have made a mistake. Please respond. For long minutes, there was nothing but static. Then, slowly, a reply came through the speakers. The voice was unmistakably alien. with harmonics and overtones that no human throat could produce. But the words themselves were in perfect English. Commander Blackthorn, I am Symbiarch Kethver of the hegemony vessel Thornbringer. Your transmission is unexpected. What mistake do you believe you have made? Zara took a deep breath. We came here to weaponize the Andromesh Nebula, to turn it into a cluster munition that could destroy your fleets. But we're beginning to suspect that this nebula isn't what we thought it was. There was another long pause. When Kethver spoke again, there was something that might have been sadness in the alien harmonics. The Garden of First Light is sacred to many species, Commander Blackthorn. It has been tended for over 1 million years, carefully shaped to nurture new life throughout this region of space. Your species discovered it barely a century ago, and now you wish to destroy it for war. The Garden of First Light, Zara repeated. Your people call it the Andromesh Nebula. We know it by its true purpose. 13 different civilizations have contributed to its cultivation over the millennia, including my own. It is not merely a star-forming region, but a carefully maintained nursery for new worlds and new life. Zara felt the blood drain from her face. How many civilizations? 13 that we know of, perhaps more who worked in secret. The garden has been producing new worlds at an accelerated rate for nearly 1 million years. Hundreds of star systems owe their existence to its influence, including, we believe, your own. The words hit Zara like a physical blow. Earth itself might owe its existence to the nebula they were planning to destroy. She keyed the transmitter again, her voice barely steady. Symbiarch Kethver, if the nebula is so important, why didn't you tell us? Why did we have to discover this on our own? We tried, Commander. The war between our species began when we attempted to prevent your people from strip mining the outer spiral systems. Those systems were, how do you say, nursery worlds. Planets specially seeded with life from the garden. Your corporate fleets were destroying in months what had taken millennia to create. Zara closed her eyes, remembering the history she'd learned in school. The first contact with the hegemony had indeed occurred near a mining operation, but the official records claimed the aliens had attacked without provocation. Now she was hearing a very different version of events. The war, she said slowly, it was never about conquest, was it? No, Commander. My people are gardeners, not conquerors. We fight only to protect what cannot protect itself. The young worlds, the developing ecosystems, the delicate balance. That allows life to flourish. Your species expands so rapidly, consumes so voraciously, that you threaten everything we have worked to build. Admiral Kessler's voice cut through the conversation. Commander Blackthorn, what's your status? Zara looked up to see the Admiral standing in the doorway, his face grim. Behind him, she could see Dr. Webb and the rest of the senior staff. Admiral, she said carefully, I think we need to reconsider our mission here. Commander, we don't have time for philosophical debates. Webb interjected. The hegemony ships are moving into attack formation. We need to deploy the generators now. Zara looked at the tactical display and saw that Webb was right. The bioships were indeed moving, sliding through space with predatory grace. But their formation wasn't aggressive. It was protective, positioning themselves between the human ships and the nebula itself. They're not attacking. She realized. They're shielding the nebula. It amounts to the same thing, Webb said. If they won't let us complete our mission, then they're hostile. Dr. Webb, Zara said, turning to face him. What if our mission is wrong? What if we're about to destroy something irreplaceable? Webb's face flushed with anger. Commander, I don't care if that nebula is the crown jewel of alien civilization. We're at war, and wars are won by those willing to do whatever it takes to survive, even if it makes us monsters. Elena asked quietly. Better monsters than extinct. Webb shot back. Admiral Kessler held up a hand for silence. Commander Blackthorn, can you arrange a face-to-face meeting with the Symbiarch? Zara nodded and keyed the transmitter. Symbiarch Kethver, our commanding officer, would like to meet with you directly. Would that be possible? I will come aboard your vessel, Commander, but I must bring protection. My people's biology is fragile in your atmosphere. Of course. We'll prepare a suitable environment in our main conference room. 2 hours later, Zara stood beside Admiral Kessler as the hegemony shuttle docked with the Prometheus, the alien craft was clearly biological, its hull rippling with the same bioluminescent patterns as the larger ships. When the airlock opened, the being that emerged was unlike anything in Zara's experience. Symbiarch Kethver was tall and graceful, with features that seemed to shift between reptilian and plant-like depending on the angle. Its skin had a translucent quality that revealed complex circulatory systems beneath, and when it moved, it did so with the fluid grace of something equally at home on land or in water. Most striking were its eyes, which held an ancient intelligence that made Zara feel like a child in the presence of a being that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. Admiral Kessler, Kethver said, its voice producing harmonics that seemed to come from multiple throat chambers. I thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Perhaps we can avoid further tragedy. Symbiarch, Kessler replied formally, my people are facing extinction. If the nebula can help us survive, then we have little choice but to use it. Kethver was quiet for a moment, its large eyes studying the humans around the conference table. Admiral, may I share with you the true history of your war? Before Kessler could answer, Webb stepped forward. We don't have time for alien propaganda. Our fleets are dying out there while we waste time talking. Dr. Webb, Kethver said gently, your fleets are dying because they are attacking nursery worlds that my people are bound by ancient law to protect. If your species would simply agree to avoid the protected systems, the war could end today and let you expand into human space unopposed. Major Kim asked skeptically. Kethver made a sound that might have been laughter. Major, my people have no interest in expansion. We are gardeners, not colonizers. For us, the perfect world is one that never needs our intervention, one that can flourish and evolve on its own. We seek to create such worlds, not inhabit them. Elena leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. Symbiarch, you said 13 civilizations contributed to the nebula's cultivation. What happened to the others? Some transcended physical existence and moved beyond our galaxy. Others chose isolation and withdrew from galactic affairs. A few made choices similar to the one your Dr. Webb is advocating now, and destroyed themselves in the process. The implications of that statement settled over the room like a shroud. Zara found herself thinking about humanity's history, about all the civilizations on Earth that had risen and fallen, often because they consumed their resources faster than they could replenish them. You're asking us to trust you, Admiral Kessler said finally, to abandon a weapon that could save our species based on the word of our enemies. I am asking you to trust yourselves, Kethver replied, to be better than your fear and desperation would have you be. Your species has great potential, Admiral. We have watched you for centuries, seen your capacity for both creation and destruction. The choice you make here will determine which path your people follow. Dr. Webb slammed his hand on the table. This is insane. We're listening to the enemy tell us how wonderful we could be, while our colonies burn. Admiral, I demand permission to proceed with the weapon deployment. Dr. Webb, Kessler said quietly. You're relieved of command of this operation. Webb's face went white with rage. You can't do this. I have direct authorization from Fleet Command, and I have authorization to supersede any order that threatens the security of this vessel and its crew. Kessler replied calmly. Security, escort Dr. Webb to his quarters. As Webb was led away, still protesting, Symbiarch Kethver turned to Zara. Commander Blackthorne, you were the first to question the wisdom of this course. What do you believe should be done? Zara looked around the table at her colleagues, then out the viewport at the magnificent nebula beyond. I think, she said slowly, that we need to find a different way to end this war. One that doesn't require us to destroy something beautiful. And if my people refuse to negotiate, Admiral Kessler asked, then we make them understand, Zara replied. We show them what we've learned here. We make them see that there are some things more important than winning. Kethver's expression seemed to brighten. There is wisdom in your words, Commander. But first, there is something you must see. Something that may change how your species views its place in the galaxy. The Symbiarch activated a device that projected a holographic star map, showing not just the local systems but a vast swath of the galaxy. Hundreds of points glowed with soft light, connected by streaming lines of energy. These are the garden worlds, Kethver explained. Planets and systems that have been seeded and nurtured over the millennia. The network extends across much of this galactic arm, creating a web of life that spans light years. Zara stared at the display, overwhelmed by its scope. How many worlds? Thousands. And at the heart of it all, the display zoomed in, focusing on a familiar region of space, the Garden of First Light. Your Andromesh Nebula. It is not merely a nursery, but the source from which all other gardens draw their essence. Elena gasped. It's a galactic ecosystem. The nebula doesn't just create new stars and planets. It actively nurtures and maintains life throughout this entire region. Precisely, Dr. Vasquez. Destroy the Garden of First Light, and you will trigger a cascade failure that could sterilize hundreds of star systems, including, eventually, Earth itself. The silence that followed was deafening. Zara felt the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on her shoulders. They hadn't just been planning to destroy a beautiful nebula. They had been preparing to commit genocide on a scale that defied comprehension. "Why didn't you tell us this from the beginning?" Admiral Kessler asked, his voice hoarse with shock. "Would you have believed us?" Kethver asked gently. "Or would you have dismissed it as enemy propaganda, as Dr. Webb suggested?" "Sometimes, Admiral, beings must discover truth for themselves before they can accept it." Major Kim spoke up, her voice small. "What do we do now? How do we stop a war that's been raging for 8 years?" "We start," Zara said, "by admitting that we were wrong about the nebula, about the war, about the hegemony. And then we figure out how to make it right." Over the next several hours, as the human and hegemony fleets maintained their tense standoff, Zara found herself at the center of negotiations that could determine the future of both species. The revelations about the nebula had shaken everyone aboard the Prometheus, but convincing Earth's leadership would be another matter entirely. "Fleet Command isn't going to like this," Ryan Torres observed as he helped Zara prepare her report. "We came here to deploy a superweapon, and instead, we're recommending a ceasefire with the enemy." "They'll like the alternative even less," Zara replied grimly. "If Kethver is right about the Cascade failure, destroying the nebula could doom humanity just as surely as losing the war." Elena looked up from her data analysis, the math checks out. "The energy relationships Kethver described are consistent with what we observed during our reconnaissance mission. The nebula isn't just creating new stars. It's actively maintaining stellar stability throughout this entire region." The door chimed and Admiral Kessler entered, looking older than his years. "I've just finished a very unpleasant conversation with Admiral Chen at Fleet Command. She's skeptical of our findings." "What did she say?" Zara asked. "That we've been compromised by enemy psychological warfare. She's dispatched the Third Fleet to complete our mission by force if necessary." Zara felt her heart sink. The Third Fleet consisted of 12 Dreadnought-class vessels and their support craft. Against the 6 hegemony ships currently guarding the nebula, they would have overwhelming firepower. But if they succeeded in deploying Webb's weapon, how long do we have? She asked. 36 hours, Kessler replied. "Maybe less if they push their engines." "Then we need to act fast," Elena said. "Can we convince the hegemony to withdraw? If there's no opposition when the Third Fleet arrives, maybe cooler heads will prevail." Kethver, who had been listening from the corner of the room, made a sound like wind through leaves. "Dr. Vasquez, my people cannot abandon the garden. To do so would violate every principle we hold sacred. We will fight to protect it. Even if that fight is hopeless, then we need another option," Zara said. "Something that stops the weapon deployment without triggering a battle." Major Kim frowned thoughtfully. "What if we could prove to Fleet Command that destroying the nebula would be counterproductive? Show them the Cascade failure scenario in a way they can't dismiss." "How?" Ryan asked. "All we have is alien testimony and theoretical models." Zara stood up suddenly, an idea forming in her mind. "Not all. We have Dr. Webb's own research. His gravitational resonance generators don't just weaponize the nebula's collapse. They accelerate natural processes that are already occurring. If we can show that those same processes extend throughout the galactic region, we'd need access to Webb's equipment," Elena pointed out, "which is currently aboard the Icarus, under heavy guard," Kessler added. "Then we ask nicely," Zara said with a grim smile. An hour later, Zara stood outside Dr. Webb's quarters, having convinced Admiral Kessler to let her make one last attempt at reasoning with the scientist. She found him hunched over his personal computer, frantically working on something. "Dr. Webb, we need to talk." He looked up, his eyes red with exhaustion and anger. "Come to gloat, Commander? Congratulations, you've successfully sabotaged humanity's last hope for survival." "Harrison," she said, using his first name deliberately, "I want to show you something. Will you look at the data we've collected? Alien propaganda." "No thank you. Not alien data. Your data. The readings from your own gravitational resonance generators." Despite himself, Webb looked interested. Zara activated her tablet, displaying the energy signature analyses that Elena had been working on. "Look at these patterns," she said. "The gravitational waves your generators produce don't just affect the immediate target area. They propagate through subspace in a network pattern that extends for light years." Webb studied the display, his scientific curiosity overriding his anger. That's not possible. The inverse square law should limit the propagation to a few parsecs at most, unless there's already an existing network of gravitational resonances to carry the signal," Zara said. "Like a vast web of interconnected star systems, all maintained by a central source." She watched Webb's face as the implications sank in. His anger faded, replaced by the expression of a scientist confronted with data that challenged everything he thought he knew. "If this is accurate," he said slowly, Then weaponizing the nebula would be like cutting the root system of a galactic forest. Everything connected to it would start to die, including Earth. Zara confirmed. Harrison, I know you want to save humanity, but this isn't the way. We'd be committing suicide to spite our enemies. Webb was quiet for a long moment, staring at the data display. Finally, he looked up at her with tears in his eyes. I've spent 3 years developing this weapon. 3 years convinced that I was saving our species. What if I've doomed us instead? You haven't doomed anyone yet, Zara said gently. We still have time to make this right, but I need your help. Will you work with us to find another solution? Webb nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? The next 24 hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Working together, Webb and Elena developed a comprehensive analysis of the nebula's role in galactic ecology, supported by hard scientific data that even the most skeptical fleet command officer couldn't dismiss. Meanwhile, Zara and Kethver worked on a detailed proposal for ending the war through territorial agreements and mutual cooperation, but their efforts might all be in vain. Long-range sensors had detected the Third Fleet's approach, right on schedule. Admiral Chen was clearly not interested in negotiation. Incoming transmission from the fleet. Major Kim announced, It's Admiral Chen. The main screen flickered to life, showing a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and hard eyes. Zara had never met Admiral Chen personally, but her reputation as a ruthless tactician was well known throughout the fleet. Admiral Kessler. Chen said without preamble, You will stand down immediately and allow my ships to complete the nebula operation. Your behavior in this matter borders on treason. Admiral Chen, Kessler replied calmly. I'm transmitting data that I believe will change your assessment of the situation. The nebula is not just a strategic target, it's a vital component of galactic ecology. Chen's expression didn't change. I don't care if it's the Garden of Eden, Marcus. We're at war, and this weapon could end that war in our favor. Nothing else matters. Admiral, Zara interjected, stepping into view of the camera. Destroying the nebula could trigger a cascade failure that would eventually sterilize Earth itself. We'd be committing species suicide. Commander Blackthorn, you're out of line. Chen snapped. You've obviously been compromised by enemy psychological warfare. When this is over, you'll face a court-martial. Kethver moved into the camera's field of view, its alien presence causing several officers on Chen's bridge to reach for their weapons. Admiral Chen, the Symbiarch said, I offer you the surrender of all hegemony forces in this sector and the cessation of hostilities throughout human space, in exchange for the preservation of the Garden of First Light. Chen's eyes narrowed. And why should I trust the word of an alien monster? Because, Admiral, the alternative is the death of both our species and countless others. Your weapon will not discriminate between enemy and ally. It will destroy everything. Lies, Chen said flatly.